Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to another tutorial. Currently I like to alternate between more advanced stuff and beginner stuff, and since the last time with the flanger video I talked about some pretty advanced stuff, I would like to do a video that is more suited for beginners on the loop station. So for this video I'm going to talk about some effects that are very helpful if you've just started using the MK2, and I'm also going to show you some examples and how to use them. Alright, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's first talk about creating a bass line. For this, we're going to utilize the guitar to bass effect. It feels like guitar to bass gets used less and less nowadays because there are simply more stable and better sounding effects. However, for starting out, it's great. As the name suggests, guitar to bass is meant to be used with guitars, but you don't have to do that. For example, if you hum with the guitar to bass effect active, you get this sound. Then, if you want to make it a little cleaner, you can change the balance to 100 and also add an LPF. Make sure to have this as the second effect, because the loop station always applies effects sequentially, meaning that it applies A first, then B, then C, and so on. The LPF itself should have roughly these settings. The cutoff is the most important one here, it should be around 20 to 30. I know we're talking about guitar to bass, but just so you know, LPF stands for low pass filter, which means that we are filtering out some unwanted higher frequencies, but keep the low ones. So if we now use these two settings and do the same humming sound as before, it sounds like this. And that's a pretty solid bass line to start out. The advantage of creating bass lines like this, compared to other effects, is that you don't need extra effects to control the pitch, because you can simply do it with your own voice, which makes it great for trying out ideas or freestyles, for example. So it could sound something like this. Okay, next is the Oscillator Bot, short Osbot. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Osbot myself, it is a very good effect for beginners, and to be honest, if you like the effect, you can keep using it. Many of the expert loopers in the game are actually using this effect. As you can see right here, you can select a lot of different waveforms. Let me demonstrate to you how they sound. This can already give you some very distinctive sounds very easily, and you can enhance this even further with these two settings, so the tone and attack. I definitely recommend playing with these two settings around for yourself, but for demonstration purposes, let me show you what the tone does. Yeah, with a higher tone you definitely get a bit more bright sound. And yeah, I think attack doesn't really matter too much for now. The most crucial things about the Osbot, however, you can find on page 2. I already adjusted some settings to make the demonstration a little cleaner. And for starting out, I actually recommend also using these two settings. So the mod sensitivity at +50 and balance at 100. The mod sensitivity just makes your sound a little bit louder, and balance at 100 means that your voice pretty much disappears. The really interesting thing here is the note selection, because you directly get to choose note and octave. This is especially convenient for people that already have experience with music production. Furthermore, it's the only effect that lets you choose actual notes. For example, if you try to create sounds with effects like the granular delay, you change the pitch by changing the time value. And these different values basically correspond to a frequency which you have to remember or look up. So yeah, with Osbot it's just much easier because you can simply change the notes. Better yet, there's a sequencer for the notes, so you can program melodies super easily. For that, we just go one page to the right and activate this switch right here. This activates the sequencer. And then we go one more page to the right, and here we can program in our notes. So yeah, with this number we can basically set how many notes we want to program in. I've selected 4 for this one, but this goes all the way up to 16. And here we can select how fast the melody should play. So yeah, as you can see right here, I already programmed in some notes, and this is basically how it sounds. This is just something really random. There you go. Next, let's talk about the radio effect. Radio is a pretty simple effect with some very limited settings, as you can see right here. That's all you get. By default, the value will be on 50, but just as with the mod sensitivity from Osbot, I recommend pulling this up to 100 to make it louder. Now let me actually demonstrate to you how this sounds, and let's try out some different lo-fi values also. Yo, this is my radio voice. You can see lo-fi is quite high right now, and let's pull it down to 1. This is how it sounds. Yeah. The radio effect is kind of a high-pass filter combined with a lo-fi effect, which gives it that radio sound. This makes it suitable to use with your voice, as you already heard. That way you can, for example, use it in a song if you want your voice to be in the background, and then maybe also put a reverb on it. Or it could be used in a build-up to a drop to introduce a new element, and for this I've already prepared some things, and here's the thing that we care about, the radio effect. So let's pull this up to about 8, and let me demonstrate. So yeah, really simple, nothing too crazy going on here. The next effect that I'm going to talk about is the twist. And if you don't know what this effect does, let me do this. And now I think you know. Besides speeding up drums, this is probably the most used effect or technique for creating build-ups, and it's for a good reason. It's very effective. On top of that, it's pretty straightforward to use. Just input your sound, apply the effect, and that's pretty much it. Like so. With this switch, you can adjust whether after the pitching up part, it should pitch down again or if it should just fade out. So in my 2 examples from just now, you could hear it pitch down again. That's because it was set to fall. Now let's select fade instead, and it will sound like this. You can also select how fast you want the rise to be with this option right here. So this is the default. With 100 it will be very slow. And then let's set it to 0. Now this will be very fast. Yeah, the same thing you can also adjust for the falling part or fading out part. Let's do this on 100. This will be very slow. And here the fading out part will be very fast. Yeah, instantly. And yeah, same for if you pitch it down. Lastly, I want to talk about the dynamics effect. Dynamics is basically an EQ with the option to adjust the dynamic range. I don't recommend this effect for long-term usage, as other effects kinda do the same thing, but better or with more options. In my opinion at least. However, if you're new to music production and mixing, it is easier to understand than other effects, because there are no frequency settings like you'd have in an EQ, for example, as you can see right here. And it's also easier to try out because there are just less options to choose from. Let's actually try some different dynamic settings along with the Osbot, for example, and let's see how it sounds. Yeah, maybe you heard some slight differences, but I think it's much better to use with drums, for example. So let's try this with a kick drum, for example. Quick pro tip for the kick drum. Try to use an HPF with settings that are kinda along these lines. You can also go lower with the cutoff. This will make it so you get more sub bass. But the important thing is that your cutoff is pretty low and you have a bit of resonance also. This will already make it sound like this. And now let's try some different dynamic settings again. Yeah, maybe you already heard some settings that you liked, but as always, you gotta try it for yourself. So the dynamics part of this effect is actually also quite nice. Dynamics, also called dynamic range, means the difference between loud and quiet. So here positive values will increase the dynamic range and negative values will decrease it. For this, let me actually input a kick onto a track, because that way we get a nice, consistent and repeating sound, and we can really try to hear for the differences between different dynamic settings. So I'll just activate the high pass for this and not the dynamics. Sure, that's fine. And now let's go to dynamics here. Okay, and now let's test some different values. So yeah, hopefully you heard some differences here. If not, don't worry, you can still use the type part right here and leave the dynamics at 0. However, since the dynamics part is quite closely related to compression, I recommend getting comfortable with dynamic range and compression at some point, because it is important for good music production. On the loop station, there are actually more ways to get compression outside of the dynamics effect, but that's a topic for another video. Before I end the video, I want to do some quick honorable mentions. So of course there are some classic effects such as reverb and also transpose. And those are pretty self-explanatory, I think, but they're still easy to use for beginners, and since you will be using them for a long time to come, I recommend getting comfortable with them as soon as possible. There are also several ways to do panning, which means creating a stereo feeling. Here you, for example, have stereo enhance. Once I activate it, you should immediately hear this effect if you're able to play stereo. However, be careful, in my experience it can decrease the audio quality. So maybe use manual pan instead. This allows you to shift the signal either to your left ear or to your right ear. And now you should be able to determine if you have your headphones on correctly. Alright, that's everything for today. I might do a video with effects for advanced usage, but that's not 100% certain. I'm still in the planning phase for that, but I hope this video was already useful to you. Alright, thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye bye.